Welcome to the ETFinalScore.com preview show as we get set to fill you in on what to expect and what we believe will take place this week in Texas high school football here in East Texas. I'm accompanied by Chris Perry and Travis Yosting. These two gentlemen are far more familiar with area football teams, and together they will break things down for you. Now let's recap a little bit about last week, Travis. Now JT played Lufkin with a top-ranked matchup game that a lot of people were looking forward to, and JT walked away with a game-winning field goal. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a great game. Came right down to the wire. You kind of had that sense from the start that it would be a close game. John Tyler had a couple chances to go for two and tie it. They opted to kick the PAT instead, and you're wondering if that was going to come back to bite them. But the coach Rick Lindholm, he trusted his offense, defense, and special teams, and in the end, Luis Duran came through with a 42-yard field goal.
Now on Twitter, a lot of people were saying that penalties almost cost John Tyler.
For the second week in a row, they had 100 yards in penalties, and it's something they're definitely going to have to clean up, because if they keep that up against Ennis, they might come home with the loss. And then also quarterback for John Tyler, McCollister, had a great drive at the very end of the game to keep them and put them in field goal range. Yeah, he was 5 for 6 passing on that last drive. The biggest play was probably his 22-yard run when they were facing 2nd and 28 from their own 11-yard line. That really kind of jump-started the drive.
Travis, the 2-point conversions, that's always such a fluid situation in the games we cover. Do you think it almost helped them? Because I know sometimes when you're constantly chasing points, at least by kicking that extra point every single time, it actually put them in position to win the game with a field goal at the end, instead of putting them in position to just maybe tie if they didn't get that 2-point conversion.
Right, well, and it definitely showed that they can perform under pressure. It's the first time really, aside from the last couple seconds against Lee, that they've been behind all year, except for maybe the first couple minutes of a game. And so, to see them, take that pressure and actually win, come from behind, was good for JT fans.
I was following you on Twitter, and we'll give you a little plug at T-Yosting ETFS, at T-Yosting ETFS, and I could see that Lufkin early on seemed like they were in control, but John Tyler must have just gone in at halftime, turned some things around, and really took it to him in the second half.
Yeah, they really, offensively, they were efficient. They had their best third down conversion rate all year, something around 67%. And defensively, they held Lufkin. Lufkin only converted about 30 or 28% of their third down. So really it was a strong second half to come back and especially limit Kiki QT in the return game.
One final thing. How about how good a job they did against Souls, the running back's last name? I was stunned when I saw the final statistics. That kid has run over everybody.
He couldn't find any room to run at all. It was really surprising. Whenever he got the ball, he was going down within 1 or 2 yards, or behind the line of scrimmage.
Now, Chris, about the Red Raiders, they pretty much put it on Lakeview Centennial last week, defeating them 41-21, and I saw that the running game was just pretty much booming and popping for the Red Raiders.
Yeah, they were going very, very fast. It was fast tempo. It was and Lakeview Centennial just could not keep up. 7-7 early on, and you're not quite sure how things are going to work out. But then they just kept upping the tempo, and I just think Lee was too much for them. Lee converted 8 of 9 third down conversions between the second quarter into the third quarter. So it wasn't like they were getting huge plays. And during those 2 quarters, they had 2 touchdowns called back by penalties, and still scored 5 on 5 consecutive possessions. So they had it rolling. And now can they take that against Garland, who Garland's going to just come after them, and they're back home. Let's see how they handle success, Travis, because they didn't handle success real well after they beat Garland-Saxon.
And was it the rushing game or the passing game that was going well for them?
I thought it was the rushing game, but I also thought it was the fact that you had the 3-headed monster, Tavon Wesley, Devontae Craver, and they were so concerned with stopping Zach Hall. And they did okay early on, but then they were getting gashed by those 2 guys. So then they started thinking, well, maybe we need to start keying on those 2 guys, and then Zach gashes them. So right now they've got a very good, multifaceted offense. They finished with 170 yards passing, so he threw the ball whenever he needed to, and he threw the ball well. They haven't right now. I think Robert E. Leaf's playing their best football when they can be when they can be passing, they can be running, and they're not basically being limited to one thing. I think in one of their, especially against Lufkin, it looked like they almost had to throw the ball so much that they didn't get a chance to really get their running game going. They haven't had to worry about that since that game. Rowlett was one of those games where I just think they didn't play well. But now now this is a big one here against Garland this week.
Yeah, it's something to check out, and we'll talk a little bit more about JT and the Red Raiders a little bit later on. But also from last week, we had Grace and Brook Hill. Now, you both in the picket line both picked Brook Hill to win that game. Now, did Grace surprise a lot of people with that 55-14 victory?
I shouldn't be wearing orange. I should be wearing blue today after what Grace did to Brook Hill. Coach Brasher, he almost couldn't put it into words when I talked to him what happened in the second half of that game. Turnovers, mistakes, and to Grace's credit, they just took advantage of everything. And what, they scored 40-something unanswered points in the second half of a 14-14 game at halftime?
Yeah, really, Grace, they took advantage of turnovers. They took advantage of special teams. They got interceptions, fumbles, everything, and they capitalized on every single one of those mistakes. And that's what a good team has to do. And I think after they lost to Dallas Christian, they're looking at it, thinking they didn't play their best game, that maybe they should have beaten Dallas Christian, but they went out and proved that they're still one of the best teams in the district.
Yeah, and I did talk to quarterback Chandler Nutt after that game on Twitter about the overall team perspective, and he said everything was just churning for him. The running game was on point, the passing game as well, and then the defense also, as you know, fumble recoveries, interceptions, one late in the game as well, which didn't really matter. They already had it sealed up. But speaking of Grace, we can roll right into our task matchups of this week. We have Grace at All Saints. What do you have on that game right there?
It's the first time they've played in 7 years. Grace is 2-0 all time against All Saints. I think they probably will continue that momentum from the Brook Hill game and make that 3-0 all time.
What do you got about that?
Yeah, it's All Saints kind of ran into a buzzsaw against Gorman, and I personally think that Grace is better than Gorman. So that tells you how difficult this situation is going to be, at least on paper. Grace and just historically lately. Grace has been better than Gorman, so I think All Saints has its work cut out for them.
Now, another one of that is GK Gorman is 3-0 right now in the TAPS division. They're playing Brook Hill. How does that game look to you, Chris?
I think Brook Hill's they're going to come in a mood. They're going to come to the field, to Harrington Stadium, in a bad mood and wanting to, much like how Grace got over losing to Dallas Christian, they're going to try to do the same thing against Gorman. But Gorman has shown that they can pretty much play with everybody. I mean, they've got a good offense, they've got a good defense. But Travis, I think this is their first big test of the entire season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've played some good teams, but I don't know if they've played anyone the caliber of Brook Hill yet. It'll be definitely their biggest test of the year. And, Brook Hill, like you said, is going to be ready to go, ready to get that win back after losing to Grace. And, if Brook Hill wins, then that just creates an even bigger logjam for, the top place. Because right now there are 4 teams at 2-1, all chasing Gorman at 3-0.
Now, we will have live footage and highlights coming from both of those games that you'll be able to check out at ETFinalScore.com on Facebook and Twitter. And a couple teams we normally don't talk about on the show. We got third-ranked Gilmer taking on Canton. Gilmer undefeated on the year, and then Canton has looked fairly decent and very good this year so far. How do you think it looks for the Eagles?
Not good when you're going up against Gilmer. They're ranked highly for a reason.
Yeah.
They haven't even really allowed anyone to get very close, and I think they continue that.
It's going to be a long night for the Canton Eagles, and it's not that Canton's not good. I mean, Canton's a good football team. It's just Gilmer right now is playing at a level that is surpassing everybody else, really in that whole classification right now. I would say that they're the favorites to win state.
Like you said, they are ranked highly for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Let's head to one of our sponsors. When we return, these guys are going to break down some JT football and some Red Raider football.
At Kelly Community Federal Credit Union, we have a monopoly on savings. So cruise on over to a Kelly Community branch today for big savings on loan rates and better earnings on deposits and investments.
At Kelly Community.
You're back to the ETFinalScore.com preview show. I'm Trevor Pill with Travis Yosting and Chris Perry. Now, a lot of people probably want to hear about the 2 area football teams in 3-0 district, John Tyler, and 2-1 Red Raiders, who are the best they've been since 2009 at this point, I believe, since you told me that, Chris. Now, let's first hit the Red Raiders, Chris. Now, this week they play Garland. What can you tell us a little bit about Garland?
Garland likes to run the football, but they've also given up quite a few rushing yards. I think they gave up almost 320 to one running back, which that's incredible to give that kind of yardage up to one player. This game's interesting because you think Lee would feel good about themselves after they beat Lakeview Centennial, but this is really the must-win game. If they don't win this game, they could finish 4-3 in district and still not make the playoffs. They've got to have this one because how tiebreaker scenarios and things like that work out.
How do you think this game's going to fare out for the Red Raiders?
I think since it's a game they have to have, the way they played last week, I think they're going to come out and get that win.
What are the things that the Red Raiders are going to have to capitalize on if they want to leave Rose Stadium with the W?
Well, they can't turn the ball over at all. Garland is a very good running football team, and they'll control things if you give them extra possessions. And at the same time, they have to be ready for the fact that they're going to have to punt the ball because Garland's got a very good swarming defensive front. Now, of course, Lee has some wrinkles that they've got prepared for them, but Garland's defense is just speedy, size, and they've actually got two whole defensive fronts that they use. They rotate this defensive front for these scenarios, and then they come in with a whole nother group for another scenario. That's very rare. Normally it's rotate a player here and there. They rotate the entire unit. So that'll be interesting. Basically, it's like always. They can't turn the ball over. They've got to be more sound on their special teams. They can't miss another extra point. They've missed 6 extra points this year on either bad snaps or bad holds or bad kicks. And I think it's very, very important that they get out on this team. They get out on this team and see how Garland deals with a little adversity.
How does Coach feel about this game?
Coach Piskey feels confident, cautiously confident. He knows that his kids are going to have to play. They cannot show up the way they did against Rowlett, feeling all good about themselves after they'd beaten Garland Saxe and come out and be flat as a pancake in the first half. They really need to step off the bus at Trinity Mother Frances Rose Stadium and really be ready to go because this is a big game. This is a game that could really determine whether or not Lee breaks that playoff duck and goes back to the postseason.
Like Chris said, this game is at Trinity Mother Rose Stadium, and we will have live coverage also on Twitter and Facebook from this game. Now over to you, Travis. JT is taking on Ennis. Now this looks like it's the battle of the unbeatens in district. What are some of the strengths you can tell us about the Ennis Lions?
They've got a great run game, one of the best rushing attacks in Texas probably, just the way they run the ball, the way they get to the line quickly. They're going to pose some problems to John Tyler in that regard. And also they have a pretty good defensive line, and they've got one defensive lineman that they got to watch out for. Got to keep an eye on him in the passing game and try to stay away from him, keep him from knocking Gio McCollister over.
Now, both these teams being unbeaten in district, could this be the game that decides possibly who the district title is going to go to?
The way it's looking, it definitely seems that way. The way the two teams have been playing, they're both 3-0, and started the season, it was kind of, you were looking at those two teams as top two teams in the district, and so far it's played out that way. In terms of playoffs, it may actually not have much of a bearing because John Tyler, win or lose, probably could go on to be the number 1 seed in Division I, whereas Ennis could go on to be the Division II number 1 seed. Now, do you think if they rack up as many penalties as they had against Luffin, it could come back and bite them in this Ennis game? Definitely, because this is a game where they're going to have to keep those chains moving, keep Ennis's offense off the field, and they don't want their defense on the field for 40 minutes. Now, Chris, how do you feel about this 3-0 district unbeaten game going on?
Well, first of all, just a side note, it's going to be a very cool visual game because you have the Leaping Lions helmets for Ennis and the Leaping Lions helmets for John Tyler. So almost exactly the same look, just different colors. So that'll be kind of neat. Ennis is tough at home. I mean, they've been historically tough, and they've been a good football team for a long time. This is a matchup between two perennial playoff teams for historically, teams that have done some things, John Tyler and Ennis. So I think that'll make it interesting. Of course, I think this is John Tyler's first trip to the Ennis Lions. In my opinion, I think John Tyler can get it done. I think JT has a team that is built to win on the road. They're okay to overcome adversity. If you take a touchdown away from them, they're just going to try to score on the next play. They don't seem like they let that type of stuff bother you, and those are the types of things that can really hurt you on the road. So I picked the John Tyler Lions to go into Ennis and to stay undefeated in district.
Yeah, that is a game that you're going to want to look out for. Now, Travis, you will be at the game, right?
Yes.
So Travis is going to be at the game, of course. He will be tweeting at @tyosting ETFS if you want to stay in the loop and see what's going on. Also, ETFinalScore will be retweeting his stuff as well as Chris's if you want to stay in the loop with both these games if you can't make it to them. Now it's time for our picket line. Last week, Chris, 3-2. Travis, 4-1.
Rough.
You know, it happens. Brook Hill game kind of got you both, and then also the Jacksonville game for you.
What happened to the Indians? I figured at home they were going to get the job done.
Well, we have another one. You have another chance. Again, I'm just going to throw out the teams that are playing against each other. Just tell me who you believe is going to win the game. First one we have is Nacogdoches at Jacksonville.
I believe the Nacogdoches Dragons are going to take care of it.
So no Jacksonville this week?
No Jacksonville.
Yeah, I got to go with
Nacogdoches as well. Now we have Palestine at Chapel Hill.
I think Chapel Hill's going to get it done.
I think Chapel Hill's going to win and win by a lot. Sorry, Palestine folks. I think Chapel Hill's just they're a much better football team.
And then we have White House at Corsicana.
This is interesting. At Corsicana, but I still think White House is going to take it.
Yeah, White House, they've had a tough start to district with the teams they've been playing, but they're going to get off the schneid.
And then you pretty much already told us your pick earlier, Canton and Gilmer.
Yeah, go with Gilmer.
Gilmer. And then the final one is Gorman at Brook Hill.
I believe the Brook Hill Guard are going to win this football game. It's not that Gorman does not have the ability to go in there and pull the upset. I just think that I think by losing to Grace, that makes it that much more. I think Brook Hill's going to win because now they know how much this game means to them.
At the risk of making the same mistake as last week, I'm going to take Brook Hill as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for your picks. Thanks for being here today. That's going to wrap up the ETFinalScore.com preview show. We thank you for watching as usual and hope that we could assist you on some of the games taking place this week. If you can't make it to any games, don't worry. Download our ET Final Score app and have highlights and the most up-to-date scoreboard in the palm of your hand. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Another show is in the books for us. Until next week, enjoy your football, East Texas.